Welcome to the Advanced Freelancing Podcast. Every week, you'll hear strategies for building your online service-based business your way. And now, here's your host, veteran freelancer, author, and TEDx speaker, Laura Briggs.
Hey listeners, if you tuned in this far, the word networking in the title of this episode didn't scare you. I know that means a lot of different things to different people, and it can be a scary term because of what we perceive networking to be: salesy, slimy, awkward small talk at local events. But the truth is that networking is so powerful when you know how to do it right. And when you're doing it right, it doesn't feel like any of those things. So I'm really excited to have today's guest who has built a great network of her own for freelancing. And we're going to talk about what that means for you and how to do it in a way that feels authentic to who you are. So welcome to the show, Juliet. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Laura. And you're exactly right on what you were saying on kind of the fear of networking and what that looks like. So I am a launch copywriter. I spend a lot of time in the world of email, sales pages. Like, I love sales through and through, but I am an introvert. So even when it comes to networking, you would think that maybe I'm like, I love going door to door and just talking to everyone in the room. And that's not me at all. So this concept of kind of like authentic and intentional networking has worked great for me in even like becoming a freelancer. And then even just kind of keeping my business running. So it's something I'm kind of passionate about because I feel like it's, like you said, kind of so intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way when you're in the driver's seat of how you want to do it.
Yeah, I think that's the great place to start right there, because to you, what does networking really mean? I feel like we have a lot of different perspectives of what that word means, and we hear it all the time, right? We get that as advice. Oh, if you want to build a great, sort of professional collection of people you might work with or people you might collaborate with or people who could refer you, you should network. And it's like used as a verb, like you should get busy networking. And you're just like, okay, what does that actually mean? What does it mean to you?
Mm-hmm. To me, it's just about connecting and making connections, which I guess that's kind of the same thing. But, connecting with people, like swapping stories, like I think of it as more as kind of just sharing more of like your life story than pitching, about what you can do and all you can do to help or something like that. Like for me, it's really just about taking the time to get to know somebody as a person and not just by, maybe their title. And that creates that, little pool, that community of people that are friends rather than just prospects.
And how do you reach out to someone authentically where you can kind of show to them, hey, I'm really interested in genuine networking here. I am not trying to use you as a means to an end. I'm not trying to get you to respond to me because I want to pitch you something right away. Are there tips around how we can reach out a little bit more organically and, not only build that good foundation with someone, but even get them to respond to our message in the first place?
Absolutely. So it would depend on maybe the reason that you want to connect with a certain person. So I would say two thoughts. Either one, vulnerability, which is what got me into where I am today freelancing, because I was a little bit vulnerable when I would reach out to certain people and say, hey, I am, stuck in the admin world. I really want to get into marketing. Would you be willing to have a conversation with me and explain kind of like what you do day to day? And it like, I approached it in a way that was just like, hey, I don't know like a lot about this industry and I want to learn. And people really responded to that really well. Like everybody was so kind and willing to help. Nobody was like, no, just go back to school, type thing. And that's kind of what I was expecting I might get. But being honest and vulnerable kind of about why I wanted to connect was really helpful. And then today when I connect with people, I have two things that I say. I will either start a fun conversation. And I always ask people, especially on LinkedIn, what's a motivational song that I should add to my Spotify playlist? And I have had great responses to that because I'm not saying, generic things like, I'd love to learn more about your business, which everyone is saying. I mean, it's not bad to say that, but people feel the pitch coming.
Yes.
And then I also don't go into like, I'm a copywriter. When do you need a copywriter? Did you know copywriters are the best people in the world? Like, I don't go about it that way. I just say, what's the song I should add to my playlist? And they respond and we start a fun conversation. And I leave it at that. Because if someone goes to my profile, they'll see a link to what I call an actually social call. And if they click the link or they copy and paste the link, it says, hey, we must have met on social media. Let's be actually social. Because on social media, it doesn't really feel actually that social. So it's really the idea of keeping everything really low risk. And it's, I guess, kind of a very wide funnel way of thinking, because I'm not trying to get people into a sales cycle. I just want them to be in my network so that if they see kind of along the way of what I'm posting, if they see something exciting to them, great. But I'm not going to spend all my time and energy pushing them into something. I just want to be their friend. And that's kind of my thoughts and how I do that.
Yeah, it's such a good strategy, because not only are you being honest, you're making a very low risk ask. So I think sometimes people might hear what you said as far as what you say when you reach out and go, well, I am doing that. No, this is one case where words really matter, right? So it's not messaging someone and saying, hey, here's my Zoom link for a 60-minute call. I'd love to chat with you about what you do in marketing. That comes across as salesy. That comes across as, great, this is someone who's going to try to sell me something like immediately. And why are you asking for 60 minutes of my time? You also did a really good job of putting the reader of your message in your shoes, because you said, hey, this is where I'm at right now. It's not where I want to be, but I don't have enough experience to be where I want to be. And I want to learn more about this industry before I take that step. So can I talk to you about your specific experience? And I think anyone reading that remembers them breaking in. They remember how hard it was or how much a network was important to them. And they can instantly go, oh man, I've been there. It would really be nice to give this person even a response or 5 or 15 minutes of my time, because I've been there and I know how hard it was to break in or scale up or get promoted. And so I think that's a really nice way of just saying, like, listen, this is where I'm at and this is where I'd like to be. And here's where I think you could fit into helping me bridge that gap. I'd love to talk to you about what you do on a day-to-day basis. It's so clear. I'm not getting on that call that I booked with you from that thinking, here we go. She's going to ask me for a job. She's going to ask me if I'm hiring freelancers. She's going to try to sell me a piece of software. No, she very clearly said, want to hear about your day-to-day. I don't have to prep for that call. I can show up and feel good about having that be part of my day. So it's a very low risk ask that I think that's something really important for freelancers to take away. The more you can be specific, the more you can humanize yourself and humanize your reader too, by going, oh yeah, I remember what it was like to get started. And I didn't know what I was doing either. The greater the chances they're going to respond. So I really love that. So tell me a little bit more about how that impacted you growing your own network. Obviously, people started responding to it. What other ways did you see that kind of impacting your business?
Yes. So exactly, like what do you do day to day, I feel like is the key. So let me tell you a little bit about my background of how I was able to get into freelancing. So I got a degree in journalism because I knew that I, loved writing, but I wasn't going to necessarily write like a novel someday or anything like that. So to me, journalism was kind of that broad scope of like the practical, smart, pathway to take. Turns out I don't love the news. So I pretty quickly, I still got my degree, but I was kind of looking into marketing jobs, but every marketing job I got was like, marketing / receptionist or marketing / event planner. Like it wasn't really as hands-on as I wanted it to be. And then I was offered a job that paid really well, but it was further in the admin side of things. And so once I was doing admin day to day, I really missed the creative, like marketing side of things, but I didn't feel like I had done anything right up to that point. And that's kind of why I felt like I ended up in the admin world. And I would try to send out my resume to marketing agencies and kind of ask like, can you give me a chance type thing? As like a writer, or like, I'll be your receptionist type thing, but nothing was really working. And I was just stuck in the thought that like, my resume is not good enough. What am I supposed to do? And so I read a book called Reinventing You by Dory Clark, and she gives a full roadmap into how to break into another industry. But the biggest thing that I took out of that was networking with people that are maybe 1 to 2 years ahead of you, or they're in a job that you think that you want. So I took that advice and I made a list of kind of the type of people that I would want to talk to. Like because I wasn't sure. I knew I wanted to get out of admin and back into marketing, but I didn't know how or where. And so I was like, do I want to be a digital marketing specialist? What does that even mean? So I wrote that down as like, I need to talk to digital marketing specialists. Growth marketing was becoming a thing. And I was like, well, what is that? What do those people do every day? What about copywriters? What are they doing? And like freelance versus agency, I had all these questions about what actually like these jobs entailed, because the title sounded really cool and like something I'd be interested in, but I didn't know what that really meant or if that would make sense for me to pursue those kind of different jobs. So I made a list. I reached out to people on LinkedIn that were kind of in those jobs and, you know, said like, hey, can I meet with you even 15 minutes for a phone call? I would love to just hear about what you do because I think I might want that type of job, but I'm not sure. And, you know, almost everybody responded. And I was able to find out so quickly when I was talking to the writers. I loved what they were saying. Their day-to-day sounded so fun to me. Whereas when I was talking to, you know, like the digital marketing specialists and they were like, I look at analytics all day. I was like, okay, I don't want to do that. Or social media managers that were talking about, you know, planning out everything. I was like, well, okay, I don't want to do that either. But, you know, when I was talking to the writers, it just was so exciting. But I also asked people how they got there because I'm like, okay, if everybody says that they got their degree in marketing, then maybe I need to go back and do that. And thankfully that wasn't the case. Some people were like, I was in, you know, environmental science or something, and they just found their way into like the marketing industry. And it was just helpful to hear people's kind of feedback in how they got to where they got. So for me, I guess my takeaway from those conversations was that if I wanted to be a writer, I needed to show the world that I could write. So I started a blog. They were like, you can just, you know, write whatever you want to, just have it exist somewhere. And through my blog, I ended up getting freelance clients. So that's really kind of the short story on how I ended up in writing, but it was helpful to just have those initial conversations and understanding where I wanted to go. And then from there, I have still networked kind of within my industry now, because even though I started my business in copywriting, you get in all these Facebook groups where people are talking about all the different things they're doing. Like I've been so exposed to like the online business management world and VAs and designers and everything kind of feels like a shiny new object. And so I was kind of wondering like, well, what if I did VA work? So I would network with VAs and realize that I don't want to do any of that, but it kind of sets that foundation of as VAs grow and as copywriters grow, we kind of start working together and have opportunities for collaboration. And that's been a great way to, again, still just like eliminate what I don't want to do in my business and keep my eyes focused on what I do want to do in my business. And I don't know, I guess just not getting like overwhelmed and distracted by the online world, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is really helpful to connect with other peers in your industry, out of your industry, people who do other kinds of freelance services, because we often think, oh, well, if, you know, I'm a business owner like them, if I'm reaching out to them, there needs to be a really clear ask. So there needs to be like, hey, I'm looking to connect with web developers because occasionally my freelance writing clients ask about web development work and I want to have someone I can refer to. You really don't need to do that, right? Like we kind of connected with one another at a conference for copywriters, and several of the most recent guests on this podcast are from the same place. And there's no need to be like, this is the thing I can do for you, or this is what I want you to do for me. There's so much power in just connecting with and talking to other people and seeing how they are building their business, what kinds of things they do or don't like. And I think this often can be really helpful if you're a freelancer thinking about pivoting your services, because rather than going, oh, you know, I'm a virtual assistant. Do I want to become an online business manager? Do I want to invest in certification for that? Go talk to some people already doing it. Hey, how is this different from being a VA? What does your day-to-day look like? It can help point you on the right path and either confirm what you're thinking of doing or help you step back and go, oh, that isn't for me. Actually, that sounds like a whole lot more, you know, strategy things or way too much responsibility that I don't want to take on or whatever. So I think that that's really helpful to think about how we can connect and work with others. And I know there's some aspects of how we can do this authentically with clients as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. And I'll say just a last thought on networking within your industry. like even in refining my copywriting skills, I guess the online world is still so intimidating because even in the launch space with copywriters, I was seeing like on the same threads that I was trying to pitch myself, I would see other copywriters that are like, my emails get a 99% conversion rate. And I was like, what does that even mean? Like when I was new to the launch space, I was so overwhelmed by like, what does that mean? Do I need to like take a course on that now? Like, I don't understand. And so I just posted in one of the like free copywriter groups and was like, hey, any launch copywriters available for like 15 minutes because I think I want to get into the space, but like, I don't get it. And they were so helpful and just so willing to just explain like, you know, don't be intimidated by the numbers. Just try to get some of your own and stay focused. And also just kind of encouraging me that there's plenty of that work out there kind of for everyone. Whereas when I've talked to like SaaS writers and stuff, and they talk about how much they love tech and that's so exciting for them, I'm like, nope, don't want to do that. So again, it's still just kind of refining that kind of approach and understanding like any copywriter that I've admired has been willing to give me at least 15 minutes. And that has been extremely helpful and kind of demystifying that thought that like they have something I don't. So I will close that chapter, but so clients and networking for referrals. So this to me is kind of the most like wide cast net. Like if I know that I want to talk to VAs or OBMs or launch copywriters, like that's kind of where I'll post in a specific group or I will, really think about who exactly I want to talk to and what questions I have. There's still always the same questions as like, what do you do day to day and how did you get there? Like, that's what I find I get the most helpful information kind of in a subtle way, I guess. But when it comes to clients, so it's still that thought of kind of casting a wide net and having a subtle and authentic approach. And kind of, I guess that's more lead generation-y. So like I'll connect with a lot of my ideal clients, usually on LinkedIn. I'll be connecting with like coaches, consultants, other marketing professionals or agencies. But I'll still just find one person and send them that message, about like a motivational song. And if we get to chatting, then I'll maybe send a link about being actually social, still just very low risk. But in those conversations, I find that the people who have accepted to chat either want to chat because it's going to be fun and they will, maybe refer me to someone down the line, or they're interested in my copywriting services. They just kind of didn't want to say it too early, if that makes sense. So sometimes I'll get on a call just doing my normal, actually social, networking call that I'm thinking I'm doing. And then 10 minutes in, they're like, so by the way, I need, a launch sequence. Is that something you do? And I'm like, yes. And so then you get into that conversation. And I think I've got like a $10,000 client out of that one time, which was awesome. So that doesn't happen every time, but people are willing to they are willing to have the sales pitch given to them if you haven't tried to sell them already.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point because we often look at prospective clients as they're either going to end in a conversion or they're not. And that's not always the case, right? So there's a lot of reasons to stay connected to people. I've had people who come back where they felt my quote was too high or they went with somebody else or some other thing happened. And I don't even remember who they are, but they remembered who I was. And it'll be like sometimes even 3 years later. And they'll be like, hey, so-and-so referred me to you. Or that client comes back into like, hey, we hired somebody else and it didn't work out. And, now we're ready to commit the budget to get it done the way we want and things like that. So it's always good to forge those authentic connections with clients. And even if they decide not to go with you, don't burn the bridge. Don't view that as a fail if they didn't convert, right? Because you never know. They may refer you. They may come back in the future. I've also had people where, let's say they were in like a chief marketing officer role. They quit and go to a new company. And then they call you and go, hey, I'm at a new company. I want to hire you to do the thing. So there's so many different ways that relationship can end. And even if it doesn't ever end in business for you, it's just a really nice way to show like who you really are. Leave the connection as a good one. Don't burn the bridge. Don't get frustrated that they didn't decide to work with you or that they picked somebody else. So I really love that advice for sure.
Absolutely. I love what you're saying about kind of that timeline because like a lot of what I do is when people are launching a membership, like a Facebook membership, they don't always know when is the time to hire a copywriter, or they're not looking for one yet. So if I make a connection with somebody in January and then in June they decide that they're going to launch something and then they realize that they need emails or something, I already have that fun kind of connection made with them. And then, we work together. But if you go too hard, in January and you're trying to get clients in January and all you're saying is like, do you need a copywriter right now? I could redo your website. I could do blog, things that are like kind of aggressive. Like, are you going to hire me right now or not? It might leave kind of a bad taste in their mouth because they're not ready. It's not the time. Whereas if you just kind of take that, friendly approach to just connect with them 6 months later, 3 years later, 10 years later, if they've been following your content for a long time, when the time is right, the referrals will come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love all of this advice so much. It takes away some of the salesy, the slimy factor of networking. And it also broadens our horizons to think about networking as more than just, oh, this person could be a prospective client. This could be a colleague who offers the same services you do or completely different services. It could be someone in an employee role as you're thinking about, hey, do I want to go in-house or do I want to change careers? So there's so much to be gained from networking. I just think back on some of the things that have opened doors for me. And a lot of times it came down to a personal connection. Someone will have met me once. It maybe wasn't even at a speaking event, but when let's say they come across somebody who says, hey, I have an event coming up. I'm looking for a speaker on blah, blah, blah. That person might bring up my name. And so it's always good to have these relationships with people, to stay in front of them, to be connected with them on LinkedIn. Any other kind of final closing tips on great networking for freelancers as we wrap up?
Yes. I was going to say in closing that like the fun part about these connections is that once you are in front of them and they're in front of you, it makes everything else so much easier. So when people say on LinkedIn, like, the way to grow there is to post more and like more and comment more. But if your online network is full of people that don't relate to you and you don't relate to them, it's going to feel extremely forced. Like, for example, I used to work in insurance. And so for a while, my network was kind of all insurance people. Now that I'm a copywriter, like, they're not commenting on my posts. I'm not commenting on theirs. But now that I've connected to so many more other copywriters, VAs, OBMs, and my clients, in the coaching industry primarily, they're sharing stuff that I find so fun to engage with. And it gives me ideas for what to post. And so all of that becomes so much more organic and enjoyable when you're surrounded by kind of like-minded people. So if anybody has been trying to kind of like put the pedal to the metal and just creating more content and hoping that, if you build your presence, they will come type thing, if you're not connected to the right people, you're kind of like shouting to the wrong audience. So I just wanted to say that too, when you establish these connections, it really makes the rest of the organic marketing, lifestyle, I guess, so much more fun and easy.
Yes, that's completely true. I encourage a lot of freelancers all the time when they're working on their LinkedIn. Sometimes you'll have people who are from your past who continue to follow you and comment and on your content because they're interested in it, because they're interested in your journey. I have some old PhD program colleagues that still follow me. And so I would never disconnect from them. But it is a really good point. Like LinkedIn and other platforms like that feed on you being connected to the kind of people who are interested in that material. So if you have a lot of people from your old job that you needed to be connected to for professional reasons, it's okay to remove that connection, both so you feel some freedom in posting whatever you want, but also so that LinkedIn doesn't see that you have 300 followers all in the insurance industry and none of them are interested in the things you're talking about now. And so it's good to kind of go through and clean as well as add people too. We often talk about adding, but kind of forget the kind of cleaning aspect of it. So awesome. There's so many great actionable tips in this episode. You really should add networking to your list. It can be small, little baby steps along the way that can make a big difference. So Juliet, where can listeners go to learn more about the work that you do?
Absolutely. Well, I'm always down to connect on LinkedIn. So you can just search my name, Juliet Peay. And if you want to do an actually social call and network with me, that is always open to anybody. But I just revamped my freebie, which is 10 kickflips to copy that converts. So anyone that's looking for those conversion tips can find that on my website, which is yeahthatwriter.com. But I would love to connect with more people because I love to.
Practicing what you preach. Thanks so much for coming on the show.